But that being said, let's get on the road and get on the gas here. Now, I know it might be hard to tell just by looking at it, but what I have here in front of me today is actually the all-new, completely redesigned 2020 Porsche 911 Carrera S Coupe, also known as the 992 generation. And despite the exterior appearance, it's actually been completely overhauled with new chassis components, new powertrain components, and a lot of really cool new features and technologies that I can't wait to show you today in this full review. And in addition to walking around all these cool features, we're also going to be going on an extensive test drive so I can really tell you guys what it's like to live with the new 911. So stay tuned to the end and let's get right into the review. And as you might have been able to guess from that wonderful introduction, I'm not the biggest fan of the way the new 911 looks. Yes, it's a beautiful car, but it's very similar to the previous generation, also called the 991. In fact, from the front end or even the side, the cars are nearly identical. And it's not a bad look. It's a very smooth, free-flowing, beautiful car, but I feel like Porsche just took the easy way out by going with evolution instead of revolution, as they've done with every generation of 911. And like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad design or I don't think it's pretty, because I just feel like it's the same as the old one. So for example, we've got brand new LED daytime running lamps with kind of a cool 4-point design here in the headlights, but we've still got that same classic shape. Round headlamps, very similar to what we saw in the 991 and all the generations before that, all the way back to Porsche's inception. One thing that has changed a little bit though is this grille up front that's going to pull in air for the radiators. As you can see, it's got a much more kind of horizontal and open design than the previous generation did, and it does have a pretty cool look. But if you don't like it, you can opt for the sport design package, which is going to add a couple fins right here that are body colored and really give the front end a far more aggressive look. I'll see if I can find some pictures to put up for you guys. It's actually really, really cool with that sport design package. And they've also made some subtle changes to the lines on the car. For example, we've got some straight stripes going up here on the hood. That actually reminds me more of the 930 generation rather than the 991 generation. But in general, you know, as a whole, the shape and the elements really have not changed since the last year. And the story continues on the side of the car. It's still beautiful and smooth, and it's got those gorgeous rear hips and flush door handles, but it hasn't changed a lot. In fact, the biggest update they've made is that this is the first 911 to have staggered tire width. So the front ends are 19-inch wheels, the rear wheels are going to be 20-inch wheels. And those are also available as a 20/21 split if you prefer to have bigger wheels. But fortunately for all of you Porsche enthusiasts out there, there is one very easy way to tell this car apart from the last generation. That is in the rear of the car. They've completely redone the taillight design. It's more of an LED strip, kind of three-dimensional look with new third taillight up on the window. Actually, I do like the look, and we still got the same general layout and proportions and everything, but it does look a little bit different. So all around, like I said, it is a beautiful car. It's a fantastic car, one of the most gorgeous cars ever produced, but it's just not that different and not that exciting. But one thing in the rear that has remained exciting is the engine layout, because the 911 is very unique in that it's not front-engined and it's not mid-engined. The engine is actually placed just behind the rear axle, the rear wheels, and that means it is a rear engine car, and there are very few of these cars out on the road today, so that makes the 911 very unique. And it's also unique in that it's a flat engine, so rather than the pistons going up and down, they kind of go side to side at each other, which is why it's called a boxer engine. It's a 3-liter twin turbocharged boxer 6-cylinder engine, which in the base models produces around 379 horsepower. But here in the Carrera S model, they've upped that to over 440. And when paired with the standard 8-speed PDK transmission, it should be able to go from 0 to 60 in just around 3.5 seconds, which is very impressive performance from a car that costs just over $100,000. Now, the interior of the 2020 911s absolutely fascinates me because it provides such a strong contrast to the exterior design, where, as you saw, it's all about the flowing body lines and the soft, smooth curves, and there's not a single sharp edge on the whole exterior of the car other than the taillights. Whereas the interior, there's not a single soft curve in it. It's all sharp edges and hard corners. So everywhere you look up on the dashboard and along the center console area, it's straight, clean-cut lines. And that's very, very different from the exterior. I was not expecting it when I first saw the inside of this car. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It still does go along fairly well with the exterior design of this car. It's modern and very minimalistic. I'd like to start off by mentioning some of the materials we have in this car. Obviously, it's a 911. You're spending over $100,000 on a car like this. So it comes standard with soft leathers on the seats and the steering wheel and just about everywhere you're going to be touching. It also comes with a variety of different available accent pieces. This model comes with these standard kind of patterned plastic accents. But you can also upgrade to wood, aluminum, or even carbon fiber. Unfortunately, while the materials in this car are great, there is one major thing that I'm not a big fan of, and it's these seats. Yes, the design is great and the leather is soft and the side bolsters are the perfect size for hard driving, but unfortunately in the base model, they come partially manually adjustable. If you want to move the seat forward or backward, you have to actually do that with levers rather than just switches like in most luxury cars. And again, you can upgrade those to 18-way power adjustable in the upper trim levels if you want to spend extra. But I feel like the base model still costs over $100,000, so it should come with fully power adjustable seats, in my personal opinion. But on a more positive note, it does come standard with dual zone automatic climate control as well as 2 USB charge ports next to the phone pad in this center armrest. And while a lot of things have changed over the years, one thing that has remained the same in almost every 911 is the gauge cluster. Despite the fact that it's halfway digital now, it still comes with that classic 5-dial design. We've got the tach right in the center where it's most important to be placed, and then the speedometer and accessories along either side in a series of 5 gauges, just like the old generations of 911. They've kept that feature in the new modern 2020 models. That's again very cool. A lot of rich and deep heritage with this model. And speaking of dials and gauges and screens and things like that, the standard infotainment system is a 10.9-inch touchscreen, which is very similar to the systems we've seen in cars like the new Macan and the new Cayenne. Definitely check out my review of those cars if you haven't already. So all around, I do unfortunately have a few issues with this interior, mainly all the straight cut lines that are so different from the exterior and the manually adjustable seats. But other than those two things, Porsche did a great job with it. So I'm gonna stop complaining and get this thing out on the road. All right, now before we start driving, I want to make something absolutely clear to you guys. I've been insanely critical of the new 911 up till now. Obviously, I went into this with very high expectations for the car, and for the most part, they were met. But there were just a few small things here and there, mostly involving the design and the fact that it hasn't changed, that I felt needed to be brought up. The reason I was so kind of negative and critical, though, is because I try to be as unbiased as possible, and I wanted this to be a very balanced, well-rounded review. And to make it more balanced and more well-rounded, I felt I had to be a little bit negative in the beginning just to balance out the positivity at the end, because I have already driven this car briefly and it's insanely good. Probably one of the best overall packages in terms of driving dynamics and performance that you can find for under $200,000. And because I'm going to be so insanely positive during this portion of the review, I wanted to, be a little bit more critical during the rest of it. So that's just a fair warning towards all you guys. As usual, I want to be unbiased as possible, but I really like the way this thing drives. With that quick disclaimer out of the way, let's put this thing into drive, and off we go. Now, as I said before, I've already had a brief time in this car, so I'm somewhat familiar with it already. But the first thing that stood out to me is the seating position is incredibly low. I've actually moved the seat up probably a good few inches, even though I'm over 6 foot, just because of the very low seating position. And I actually like that. It makes you feel very connected with the car. And it was something I noticed back when I still owned my 944. And it's just something that's been in Porsche for a while, the very, very low seating position that really improves the way this car drives, in my opinion. So I'm just kind of letting the car warm up a little bit in the parking lot right now. It's actually incredibly smooth, even with, the high tech they've put in this car to make it go fast and all the feedback you get from the controls. It's still a very smooth ride. Porsche does a great job of balancing comfort with the performance. That's something I've seen in all their cars, even, the SUVs that are somewhat more controversial. It's still here in the 911. Everything is pretty firm. Like, you do have to put weight on the pedals and you do have to use your arms to turn the wheel. It's not going to do anything for you, but it's not too bad that you couldn't live with it. But that being said, let's get on the road and get on the gas here. Yeah, I like this car. I like this car quite a lot. I said 0 to 60 in what, 3.5 seconds for the Carrera S model? It definitely does that. Go around this turn a bit fast here. Car sticks very well. It feels so well laid out around these turns back here. Very, very solid proportions and weight distribution. All right, we're gonna pull back out on the road here. It just goes. Like you don't even, there's very little time you even have to wait for it to downshift. It sticks so well and it moves so light. It's not a light car, but it feels like it is. Crazy fast. You wouldn't think it was this fast just by looking at it. Like I said, not that exciting from the exterior. But once you get in the driver's seat, oh my gosh, it is crazy how good these cars are. The handling is fantastic, the acceleration is fantastic, the seating position and visibility are fantastic. My only complaint, there's literally only one. It's gonna be, it doesn't sound that exciting. You know, boxer, 6-cylinder, not incredibly high displacement with twin turbos. It sounds a little bit like a vacuum cleaner. So that's slightly disappointing to me, but you know, we've seen that in just about every 911, so not very surprising. Alrighty guys, if you enjoyed this video, you might want to go ahead and check out my reviews of the Panamera Turbo or the new Macan, or pretty much any Porsche you're interested in. I probably reviewed it, so subscribe if you haven't already. I'd also like to extend a thank you to Bert Smith Porsche here in St. Petersburg, Florida for allowing me to review this 911 today. There is a link to their inventory below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching.